What's going on, guys? It's Jimmy here. So we got several different things, a couple things here for you guys that we're now only about less than 2 weeks away here from the first default of our country ever, which would be catastrophic here. Two new options emerging here that the Democrats are considering here that I'll go over here for you guys in this video. Also, we have a new ruling from the Supreme Court on whether Twitter is liable for aiding terrorists. I'll give you the details here on that in this video as well. So, number one, the first option for Democrats considering if Republicans and Democrats can't agree and find a compromise solution to raising the debt ceiling to prevent the country from defaulting and having our whole financial system collapse, the US dollar collapse, and potentially having Social Security payments delayed, Medicare, Medicaid payments delayed. Even Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen has said this. The president has said this in the past. Senator Bernie Sanders has said this. First, we'll go to Senator Tina Smith here for option number one. And then I'll tell you about option number two, which is a new growing option to potentially get rid of this here altogether. So here, take a listen.
Joining us now, Democratic Senator Tina Smith of Minnesota. She's among the progressive Democrats in the Senate, urging the president to consider using the 14th Amendment to avoid default. Senator, thanks for being on. Has this ever been done before? I'm looking back, and it seems like a long time ago. What would be the consequences, do you think, of doing this? And why do you believe this is the way forward?
Well, thanks, Mika. It's great to be on with you today. I mean, the first thing I want to say is that if anybody can negotiate an agreement, a reasonable agreement with these extremist Republicans, it's Joe Biden. And the fact that they haven't taken default on our debt off the table is a sign that they're essentially trying to hold our whole economy hostage. So what we're saying with this letter is that if we have a choice between defaulting on the one hand, and invoking the 14th Amendment on the other hand, the 14th Amendment is clearly an option that the president needs to have ready to go, because the consequences of a default, the first time ever, would be absolutely catastrophic, as you just explained in your program a moment ago.
Yeah, and I can already hear if this happens, if this is the path chosen, the Republicans just would jump all over this. They claim they have a plan. They put a plan forward, and it's up for the Democrats and for President Biden to accept it. How will the White House and Democrats like you be able to message what they really were proposing? It's going to be very tough sledding if the 14th Amendment is invoked, don't you think?
Well, first, look at what their proposal is. They are essentially saying that unless we give in to their hostage taking, their strategy is to cut food programs and health programs for women and seniors and kids. And by the way, they won't even consider raising a penny more in taxes from their wealthy buddies and big corporations. That's completely unacceptable. So we don't want to take the path of invoking the 14th Amendment, but if they leave us no choice, we are not going to be held hostage by their extremism. And I think it's important for them to hear that as they're negotiating with the president, who is being eminently reasonable and is looking for a path forward.
So, Senator Smith, as you know, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen has said of the 14th Amendment, she's not even sure it's constitutionally viable, but she also believes this is not a short-term strategy because it would take time to play out in the courts, would certainly be challenged legally, and she said it could spark a constitutional crisis. Part of the reason President Biden has pushed it aside a bit is because he says it takes too long, too. So how do you see the 14th Amendment getting us out of this mess before June 1st, which is the date that the Treasury Secretary has laid out as the day when America stops being able to pay its bills?
Well, look, I think that Secretary Yellen is demonstrating that the administration and President Biden is negotiating in good faith with the Republicans to try to find a reasonable deal. But if that isn't possible, if the choice is between a default on the one hand and invoking the 14th Amendment, which says in the Constitution that the public debt of the United States shall be, upheld, that would be, I think, a far better option than to experience the catastrophic consequences of a default and what that would mean for millions of jobs lost, Americans losing trillions of dollars in wealth because of the declines in their savings accounts, interest rates going up. I mean, you know it. We all know it, what a disaster that would be. But I think Americans, because we've never had that default happen, are just sort of trying to come to grips with what it would really mean for them. And it is not an abstract problem. It is something that would affect them in their pocketbooks and in their banking accounts in very real and tangible ways. We must avoid that at all costs. And that's why the 14th Amendment needs to be on the table as an alternative if the other choice is default.
Now, option number 2 on the table here. You can see here, Senate Democrats are asking Biden to stop negotiating with Republicans on a debt ceiling solution and take a route that would get rid of the problem forever. There's a slightly different one here as well, and that would be to get rid of the debt ceiling forever. So this is an option that they're talking about here. What they would need is they would need all the Democrats and 5 Republican votes in the House of Representatives. And of course, they would need 60 votes in the Senate. This would get rid of the debt ceiling forever. A lot of people have said, if you've read the comments here in my comment section for a long time, even going back several years, that they should get rid of the debt ceiling because they've had to raise the debt ceiling 78 times since 1960. And this is starting to be a growing concern over and over and over. Even former President Donald Trump, they had to raise the debt ceiling 3 times in his 4 years. And if you go back, even during his CNN town hall, he was quoted, I don't have the exact quote here or something, but he said something like, yeah, the debt ceiling should not be something that should be, negotiated on. And of course, he said that during his presidency. But now, when he's not president, he said, yeah, we should default on it because, it would make Biden look bad. But the reality of it is if we default on it, it would be terrible for our country. It would be literally the worst financial collapse we've ever seen. And if they get rid of the debt ceiling, it doesn't mean that, hey, unlimited spending forever, yay, let's go. Remember that pretty much any 99% plus of spending still has to be approved by Congress. Okay, they still have the yearly budget. Military spending, anything type of spending still has to be approved by Congress. There's very few spending that doesn't get approved by Congress. Okay, maybe like executive orders or some miscellaneous type spending and stuff like that. So this is the debt ceiling is like a double feature over top of that, and it's just a way for our country to default and collapse, and we're getting closer and closer to this actually happening. And one of these days it's going to happen, and if they get rid of it, it's just going to prevent our country from doing that. You can let me know your thoughts here in the comments. They could do it now, or a perfect time to do it would be maybe Republicans and Democrats can never get agreed. Maybe they raise it one more time here now, but maybe after this time, right before the election, would be a perfect time to get rid of the debt ceiling, because then they can say, okay, we didn't raise it for Biden because going into the election would be a perfect time to get rid of the debt ceiling because we won't know who will be the next president. So you'll be getting rid of it. Biden will have basically served out his full term, the full 4 years. Okay. And you'll be getting rid of the debt ceiling in time for the next presidential election. So you won't know who will be the next president. Will it be a Democrat? Will it be a Republican? You won't know. And it'll be the perfect time to get rid of the debt ceiling. So you can't say, oh, we're getting rid of it for a Democratic president. Oh, we're getting rid of it for a Republican president. It'd be the perfect time to get rid of it, if you know what I'm saying. So we're not like saying, oh, we're doing favors for this guy or that guy, right? It would just be a favor for our country, so we don't default. And the Supreme Court just made a major ruling on whether Twitter was liable for aiding terrorist organizations here. Take a listen.
The Supreme Court has unanimously decided that Twitter is not going to be found liable for aiding and abetting terrorists. In this case that was argued in February, the plaintiffs were trying to say that Twitter was aiding and abetting ISIS because they were at times recommending videos and information about ISIS. It's really focused on Section 230 of federal law, which really is seen as the bedrock of the internet. It says that social media companies and websites cannot be sued for the material that is on their sites. In other words, you can't be sued for things that are being posted on your site. Twitter can't be sued for the speech that people are expressing. So this is a big decision. It's supposed to be, we think, contested with a decision that's dealing with Google and YouTube. In that case, the parents of a student that was killed in a terrorist attack sued to say that YouTube should not be recommending terrorist videos. We're still at this moment waiting to see whether or not that Google case is also going to be decided, but a big decision here with Twitter not being found liable. They were found not to have a claim.
Okay, Yamiche, stay with me. I want to also bring in our Laura Jarrett, who's covering these decisions as they're coming down, which the Supreme Court releases every 10 minutes, starting at 10 o'clock. So we've had a few. This is a big one here that we've been watching for, though. And Laura, I understand they maybe did also release a similar case, a decision on the Google case Yamiche just mentioned. Fill us in. What was the latest there? Is it the same as Twitter?
Essentially, yes. This is a big win for the tech companies that were worried that this shield law known as Section 230, which for years has allowed the tech companies to avoid liability for what users post on social media, they essentially dodged that whole issue and decided that these plaintiffs couldn't actually make a claim under an entirely different law, an anti-terrorism statute. And they said because they didn't even make out a claim under that, they don't even have to reach the Section 230 issue, which is the thing that the tech companies had been so worried about in these cases, worried that the justices would somehow cut back what had been really an expansive shield law for many years. And because the court has avoided that issue completely, they don't have to reach it. Now, it doesn't mean that they might not reach it in another case on it. Doesn't mean that they might not find a better vehicle for it. But at least on this record, the tech companies have avoided major liability.
So does it change anything about how social media operates then, Laura?
Well, we're going to have to dig into some of the language here. These are lengthy opinions. We'll have to dissect it a little bit to see if the justices preview or tip their hat in any way and how they would rule in a different type of case. But as of now, no. And, you know, the justices point out that the plaintiffs here, the families who were grieving the loss of their loved ones who were lost in terrorist activity overseas, that they didn't sue ISIS. They sued the tech companies. And remember, the idea was that the tech companies were guiding people, sort of steering them to problematic ISIS-related propaganda that was used as a recruitment tool online, on Twitter and on Google. And the idea was that those tech companies knowingly knew that their platforms were being used that way and didn't do anything about it. But it seems as though, based off of some of the language here, that the court was really worried about opening up Pandora's box, if you will, if they had allowed these claims to go forward. And so they've decided, again, at least on this record, not to do it.
Yeah, so you can let me know your thoughts. I mean, the way the algorithm works here on YouTube and, you know, a lot of these companies is that it learns what you're interested in. So if you're watching videos on that type of content, it's going to start recommending you more videos on that type of content. You know, so for them to be sued on that and say, oh, well, it's recommending you videos on this type of content. Even if you say you're not interested on that, well, if you're watching videos on that, the algorithm thinks you're interested on it. Even if you're not like saying, if you're not for it, but you're watching videos on it, right? It's going to recommend you videos on it. Even if like maybe you dislike it or you're just like interested in it or like you're just wanting to find out about it or whatever the reason is, right? If you're watching videos on that type of content, it's going to recommend you more videos on that type of content, right? And that's just the way the algorithm works. So if they were to be sued on that, you know, it would have been really a groundbreaking decision and could have really changed the way the internet works nowadays. So You guys can let me know your thoughts on the decision. I think it's the right decision, and this is pretty much my wheelhouse. I've been in the internet for 20 plus years, and I think it's the right decision. I don't really think that they were promoting this stuff or anything. I think it's just the way the internet works nowadays for multiple different companies. So let me know your thoughts here in the comments. I'll keep you up to date here. If you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe down below. Click the bell icon. It's completely free to do so. This way you won't miss out on new videos here on our YouTube channel, and I'll keep you up to date here. Thanks for liking and sharing our videos. Really helps out our YouTube channel. And here's some videos you should watch next. Be aware, Putin is testing the U.S. defenses here in this video. And Congress is trying to block the Chinese from buying U.S. land, and a Supreme Court ruling on gun laws. And my wife's in this video here as well. So click on one of those videos next. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.